Why would a ruthless billionaire spend $10 million on a custom red Ferrari, only to force his maid's teenage son to scrub its tires until his fingers bled? To the world, Julian Sterling was a monster of pure arrogance. But as the maid's son knelt beside the glowing engine, he whispered a secret that would shatter the billionaire's entire empire. Julian Sterling was the undisputed king of Silicon tech, worth billions, living in a fortress-like mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean. His crowning glory was a bespoke Ferrari Monza, modified by custom engineers over 3 tedious years. Everywhere Julian drove, crowds gathered in awe, but behind his dark sunglasses hid an ominous secret that kept him awake every single night. For 15 years, a quiet woman named Elena had maintained the vast estate, cleaning marble floors and folding silk sheets without ever complaining. Her 19-year-old son, Leo, lived with her in the modest quarters above the detached garage. Leo was brilliant with mechanics, silent as a ghost, and completely ignored by the high society guests who frequented the manor. To any outside observer, Julian treated Leo like dirt under his designer shoes. He would deliberately spill espresso on the pristine garage floor and bark at Leo to mop it instantly. "If you ruin my floors, boy, I will throw you and your mother out on the street," Julian would sneer, his voice echoing cold across the polished concrete. Yet despite the constant public humiliation, Leo never shed a tear or complained to his mother. In fact, every time Julian yelled at him, Leo merely bowed his head and murmured, "Yes, Mr. Sterling, right away." But sharp observers noticed something deeply unsettling. Leo's eyes were never filled with fear or anger. They were filled with intense calculation. The true mystery began when Julian spent $3 million additional modifying the Ferrari's custom chassis. Rumors swirled in high finance circles that Julian was going bankrupt or losing his mind. Why would anyone install heavy carbon-reinforced titanium plates underneath a racing car designed for sheer speed? Professional mechanics around the world were left utterly baffled by the nonsensical upgrades. What the public did not know was that Sterling Manor was under constant covert surveillance. High-powered parabolic microphones and pinhole cameras were secretly planted across the property by Arthur Vance, Julian's former business partner and a ruthless corporate cartel leader. Arthur wanted to strip Julian of his assets, waiting like a vulture for a single misstep. Julian knew he was being watched every second of the day. Every harsh word he yelled at Leo was a calculated performance designed for the hidden microphones. If Arthur suspected for even a moment that Julian cared for Elena or her son, Arthur would eliminate them without hesitation, just as he had done to Leo's father years ago. 10 years earlier, Leo's father had been Julian's chief engineer. When he discovered Arthur Vance's illegal international laundering ring, he was murdered in a suspicious car crash staged as an accident. Julian had sworn an oath over his friend's grave to protect the family, but to keep them safe, he had to play the villain. Every night at precisely 2 a.m, when the house was silent and the security cameras underwent their automated 3-minute reset, the real story took place. Julian would slip down to the soundproof basement garage, his cold corporate facade completely melting away as he handed a heavy titanium diagnostic tablet directly to young Leo. "Did you inspect the secondary firewall on the ECU tonight, Leo?" Julian whispered, his voice trembling with genuine fatherly warmth. Leo nodded eagerly, sliding under the red Ferrari with specialized tools. "The encrypted code is transferring perfectly into the car's central server, Uncle Julian." "Arthur's spies suspect nothing," Leo replied with a sharp, confident grin. The custom Ferrari was not just a luxury car, it was a mobile, indestructible data vault. Julian had secretly routed all of Arthur Vance's stolen financial records, wiretap recordings, and murder evidence into a hardened server hidden inside the Ferrari's solid carbon V12 engine block. It was the safest vault on Earth, hiding in plain sight. However, time was running out faster than either of them anticipated. Julian had been secretly diagnosed with terminal stage 4 brain cancer, keeping the agonizing pain hidden behind dark sunglasses and painkillers. He had less than 2 months to live, and if Arthur seized the estate before the trap was sprung, all hope would be lost forever. One afternoon, Arthur Vance unexpectedly arrived at the estate with a team of armed bodyguards. He walked around the glowing red Ferrari, tapping his gold cane against the carbon fiber hood with a condescending smirk. "A beautiful toy, Julian," Arthur sneered. "It is a pity you will not be around much longer to drive it." Julian stood tall, masking his physical agony, and scoffed arrogantly. "This car costs more than your entire life, Arthur. Get off my driveway before I have my security throw you into the street." To heighten the illusion, Julian turned and screamed furiously at Leo, demanding he polish the tires Arthur had touched with his cane. Elena watched from the kitchen window, her eyes brimming with tears. She still believed Julian had turned into a heartless monster who despised her son. Leo had never told his mother the truth because Julian insisted that complete ignorance was her only protection. The burden on 19-year-old Leo's shoulders was heavier than mountain granite. That evening, Arthur Vance sat in his penthouse suite, reviewing the wiretap audio from Sterling Manor. "Julian is dying and still abusing his domestic staff," Arthur muttered to his head of security. "The fool is distracted by pride. When he dies, we move in, take the estate, and crush anyone who gets in our way." Late that night, Julian coughs blood into a handkerchief inside the garage. Leo rushed to his side, but Julian held up a trembling hand. "Listen to me, Leo," Julian whispered hoarsely. "The car's ignition key contains a biometric reader coded exclusively to your DNA. If anything happens to me, you press the start button 3 times. Leo's eyes filled with tears as he gripped Julian's shaking hands. "I cannot do this without you, Julian," he pleaded. Julian smiled weakly, pressing a small leather-bound book into Leo's palm. "You are smarter than your father was, Leo. You hold the key to justice, freedom, and $50 million that Arthur can never touch." 2 days later, during a lavish garden party filled with media reporters and high society elites, Julian staged the ultimate dramatic climax. Standing next to the red Ferrari, Julian pointed a finger at Elena and screamed loudly so every reporter and hidden camera could hear, "You and your useless son are fired. Leave my property now." The crowd gasped in shock as Elena burst into tears, utterly heartbroken by the sudden cruelty. Leo quietly took his mother by the hand and led her off the estate without saying a single word. The media headlines exploded overnight: "Billionaire Julian Sterling fires loyal maid in heartless tirade." Exactly as Julian had carefully planned. By publicly firing Elena and Leo, Julian created an ironclad legal record proving they no longer worked at the estate. When Arthur Vance's mercenaries moved in to seize control, Leo and Elena would be miles away, completely removed from the danger zone. Julian was stripping away his own reputation to save their lives. Just 12 hours after the firing, Julian collapsed in his grand study. His terminal illness had reached its final, unstoppable chapter. Emergency sirens blared as an ambulance rushed him to the central hospital. Hearing the news, Arthur Vance smiled triumphantly, immediately rallying his legal team to seize the vacant Sterling Manor estate. Arthur and his armed guards arrived at the manor gates within an hour, declaring themselves court-appointed receivers of Julian's wealth. They broke into the main garage, eager to seize the legendary $10 million Ferrari. But as Arthur stepped close to the vehicle, the garage doors slammed shut automatically, plunging the room into total darkness. Emergency red lights began flashing as high-decibel sirens echoed off the concrete walls. Arthur's men drew their weapons in panic, shouting blindly into the shadows. Suddenly, a quiet side door swung open, and a single silhouette stepped calmly into the flashing red glare. It was 19-year-old Leo, holding the titanium Ferrari key. "What are you doing here, Maid boy?" Arthur spat, pointing his cane threateningly. "This property belongs to me now. Get out before my men throw you in prison." Leo did not flinch. He walked slowly toward the red Ferrari, his face calm and devoid of all fear. "This car was never meant for racing, Arthur," Leo said softly, his voice echoing with absolute authority. "And it was never meant for Julian either. It was custom-built for this exact moment." Leo pressed his thumb against the Ferrari's starter button, activating the hidden biometric DNA scanner. The twin-turbo V12 engine roared to life with a deafening rumble that shook the entire foundation of the mansion. But instead of revving up, the Ferrari's built-in satellite uplink system illuminated, projecting massive holographic screens directly onto the garage walls. Arthur's eyes widened in sheer terror as his own voice filled the room. Audio recordings began playing at maximum volume. Arthur ordering the hit on Leo's father 10 years ago, wiretap logs detailing federal tax evasion, and video clips proving systematic bribery of high-ranking government officials. The Ferrari's custom computer was broadcasting the entire encrypted evidence library directly to the FBI and national television networks. Arthur stumbled backward, clutching his chest as panic seized his throat. "Turn it off! Kill the engine," he screamed wildly at his guards. But the Ferrari's titanium security plates locked the engine compartment solid, rendering it completely bulletproof and indestructible. Julian's ultimate trap had snapped shut with flawless precision. Outside the estate gates, police sirens echoed across the valley. Dozens of federal tactical vehicles smashed through the iron gates, swarming the driveway with drawn weapons. Within minutes, Arthur Vance and his entire security force were thrown onto the gravel in handcuffs, their vast criminal enterprise crumbling in seconds. As federal agents secured the property, the lead investigator walked up to Leo, looking at the glowing Ferrari in sheer disbelief. "Who engineered this system?" the agent asked. Leo looked up at the sky, tears streaming down his face. "A hero who sacrificed everything to protect us," Leo whispered quietly. Leo rushed directly to the hospital intensive care unit, where Elena was already sitting beside Julian's bedside. Julian was hooked up to life support monitors, his breathing shallow and faint. But as Leo entered the room and held Julian's hand, the old billionaire's eyes slowly opened with a gentle smile. Is it finished, Leo?" Julian whispered softly, his frail voice barely audible over the slow rhythmic beep of the hospital heart monitor. Leo squeezed his hand tightly, tears streaming freely down his face. "Arthur is arrested, the entire criminal network is dismantled, and my mother is finally safe." "You did it, Uncle Julian. You won." Elena stood by the bed, completely frozen in shock. Julian looked up at her, tears pooling in his tired eyes. "Forgive me, Elena, for every cruel word I screamed at you," Julian breathed softly. "I had to make them believe I hated you, so Arthur would never target you or your brilliant son." Understanding hit Elena like a thunderbolt. The harsh yelling, the endless chores, the dramatic public fire engine was all a protective shield forged out of profound love and loyalty to her late husband. Elena dropped to her knees, clutching Julian's hand and sobbing with deep gratitude. Julian handed Leo a sealed envelope bearing the wax seal of Sterling Estate. "The Ferrari holds one last secret beneath the driver's seat, Leo," Julian whispered with his final breath. "You were like a son to me. Take care of your mother." Seconds later, the heart monitor flatlined into a steady tone. 3 days later, a private funeral was held on a quiet sunny cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Only Elena and Leo stood by the flower-covered casket, paying silent homage to the man who had traded his reputation, his health, and his fortune to ensure their freedom and safety. After the service, Leo returned to the quiet garage at Sterling Manor. He sat down inside the custom red Ferrari, feeling the soft leather steering wheel. Remembering Julian's final words, Leo reached beneath the driver's seat and pressed a hidden mechanical release lever hidden behind the carpet. A concealed compartment slid open silently, revealing a pristine silver drive and legal documents sealed by the Supreme Court. Attached was a personalized handwritten note from Julian: "Leo, inside this drive lies absolute ownership of this estate, along with a $50 million offshore trust fund created in your name." Leo read the document aloud to his mother. "This money was recovered from Arthur's illegal trade and legally transferred to your father's estate as rightful restitution. You and your mother will never have to scrub another floor or worry about survival again for the rest of your lives." Elena wept tears of joy and sorrow as she hugged her son tightly inside the sparkling garage. She realized that while the rest of the world saw Julian Sterling as an arrogant, heartless billionaire obsessed with rare sports cars, he was actually a silent guardian angel who lived and died for ultimate justice. In the coming weeks, news of Arthur Vance's conviction made global headlines. The corrupt corporate empire was completely dismantled, and millions of dollars in stolen assets were returned to innocent victims. The high-tech red Ferrari became legendary in courtrooms worldwide as the invincible mobile server that brought down an empire. Rather than selling the massive Sterling Manor estate, Leo decided to honor Julian's memory in a grand way. He transformed the vast property into the Sterling Tech Institute, a tuition-free academy dedicated to teaching advanced mechanics, computer engineering, and cutting-edge robotics to underprivileged youth who possessed big dreams. Elena became the beloved director of hospitality at the institute, ensuring every young student who walked through the doors felt welcomed, fed, and cherished. The once quiet, lonely halls of Sterling Manor were now filled with laughter, learning, and the bright energy of hopeful young minds. In the center of the institute's grand glass atrium, the custom red Ferrari sat on a raised marble display pedestal. A shining brass plaque was permanently installed in front of the legendary supercar, engraved with timeless words that every visiting student read with deep reverence and inspiration. The brass plaque read, "True wealth is never measured by the millions spent on luxury, but by the lives protected in silence. Behind every great sacrifice lies an unseen hero." Visitors from all across the globe traveled thousands of miles just to stand beside the famous vehicle. Late one evening, Leo walked into the quiet atrium after classes ended. He gently ran his hand along the polished carbon fiber wing of the Ferrari. Although he was now the wealthy head of a booming technology empire, he still wore his mechanical jumpsuit with humble pride. He remembered the long midnight hours spent crouching under the hot engine bay, listening to Julian whisper invaluable lessons about honor, integrity, and patience. Leo realized that Julian had not just given him financial freedom, he had given him a lifelong purpose, a father's legacy, and an unshakable moral compass. Suddenly, Leo noticed a soft blue light gently flickering from the Ferrari's carbon dashboard instrument cluster. Intrigued, he opened the driver's door and climbed inside the custom leather cockpit. A hidden video file was queued on the central telemetry display monitor, titled simply "For Leo, my son." Leo pressed play with a beating heart. Julian's face appeared on the clear screen, recorded months before his passing. Julian was smiling warmly without his dark sunglasses. "If you are watching this, Leo, it means the storm has passed and you are now a man of true substance," Julian said softly. "Never forget where you came from, my boy." Julian's recorded voice resonated softly inside the quiet leather cabin. "Always protect those who cannot protect themselves, and remember that the loudest judgments from shallow minds mean nothing compared to the quiet truth burning inside your own heart." Tears of pure peace slipped down Leo's cheeks as the video display slowly faded to black. He closed his eyes, hearing the faint imaginary echo of a roaring V12 engine racing toward the open horizon. The truth had finally set everyone free, and justice had been served in full measure. Leo stepped out of the atrium into the cool night air, looking up at the starry sky with a profound sense of gratitude. The Maid's son was no longer hiding in the shadows, he was living proof that love, sacrifice, and truth will always conquer power and greed. What an unforgettable story of secret sacrifice, ultimate justice, and hidden love. If this powerful tale touched your heart, please hit the like button right now. Share this story with your friends, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories.